Hello and welcome to the Spring Common Assessment Review Packet for Precalculus Free Response Problem Solution. By this point, you should have already worked through the problem on your own using a pencil, and you should have a pen of a different color out right now to go along and give yourself some feedback as I present my solution to this. So we're going to dive right on in here. We're given this function r of t right here, and I notice it's a cosine with all sorts of stuff on it. Well, let's break this down. Anytime I've got something of the form a times cosine of b parentheses x minus c plus d, I know that I can figure out a whole lot of stuff like our amplitude, period, midline from what these a, b, c, and d values are. So let's go ahead and get it. The amplitude is related to a. It's actually the absolute value of a is our amplitude. Next, if we're talking about the b, then we're talking about the period, but b is not directly equal to the period. We need to do 2 pi over the b value in order to find the period. For the c value, well, our c value is talking about a phase shift. That means how far left or right am I sliding this sinusoid? And the d value, that's the up or down, so it's going to be our midline. That's a vertical shift right here. I'm sliding it up or down, so I'm changing where the midline is. All right? So let's go ahead and dive right in. Using correct units to determine the amplitude, period, and midline. Well, those are going to come from this a, b, and d values here. Notice in our particular setup, our c value is actually going to be 0. There's no addition or subtraction on the inside of the parentheses right there. Okay, so our amplitude, we're talking about, well, that's going to be the absolute value of -4, which is just 4. And we want to get the units. We'll talk about units in just a second. For the period, well, we're talking about 2 pi over the b value, and in this case, our b value is this pi over 3 right here. So 2 pi over 3. And I'm going to be a fraction killer. I don't like stacked fractions, so I just multiply the main fraction bar by a 3 over a 3 right there. Down in the denominator, the 3's cancel. I'm left with 2 times 3 would be 6 pi over pi, and the pi's cancel to give me just a 6. I'll get the units in a second. Last, they want the midline. And the midline comes directly from the d value. How far up or down am I shifting? So in our case, it is 4. All right, let's go ahead and get our units now. If we read, we have r of t, the output, in other words, like the y values, are gallons per hour. So if we have gallons per hour as our y values, well, an amplitude is talking about how far up or down my function is going. That's definitely talking about a y value. So that's going to be in terms of gallons per hour. Okay. The period, well, the period's talking about how long a single wave is. So that's talking about x values here. Let's read. I don't have x's, I have t's. And t is measured in hours since the pump was turned on. So we're talking about 6 hours since the period talks about an x value. The midline, again, midline is talking about how far up or down I'm shifting. So we're talking about gallons per hour on that one. Okay, fantastic. Now, how are points going to be awarded here? Well, you're in the first point for the numerical answers. In other words, did you get the 4, the 6, and the 4? And your second check is going to come from the units. All right. Just a quick note, though. You can earn 1 of 2 points if the student has 2 correct answers with correct units. So, for example, if you got the amplitude and period totally correct with both the 4, the 6, the gallons per hour, and the hours, but then you blew it on the midline. You said it was like 6, and you didn't get the units. It didn't matter. If you got 2 of the 3 correct, fully correct, then you get 1 point, even if you totally blew it on the third one. Okay, Let's go on to part B then. It says determine the value of r of 9 over 4. Okay, I can do that. R of 9 over 4. That means I'm going to plug 9 over 4 into my function. I've got negative 4 cosine of pi times 9 over 4 divided by 3. Okay, and I need to add 4 to that. Well, what's this actually equal to? I've got a negative 4 cosine of the 9 and the 3 will partially cancel. I'll have 3 pi divided by 4 on the inside there, plus a 4. Okay, so I got to figure out what cosine 3 pi by 4 is, and this is no calculator, so I'm thinking about drawing a triangle. And pi, 0 to pi, is all the way over here. If I'm 3/4 of the way, well, 1/4 of the way, this would be pi divided by 4, 2 pi divided by 4, 3 pi by 4, it would be over here. So I'm talking about making a triangle that looks something like this. And if you think about a 3 pi by 4 angle right here, that's our 3 pi by 4 angle, we're left with 1 pi by 4, which is a 45-degree angle. So I've got negative square root of 2 over 2 and square root of 2 over 2 if I am on the unit circle with a hypotenuse of length 1 right there. So cosine, if I'm talking about cosine, talking about the x value on the unit circle. So that is going to be our answer right here. So let's plug it in. I've got negative 4 times negative rad 2 over 2 plus 4, which will be equal to, all right, negative times negative is positive. The 4 and the 2 partially cancel. I have 2 square roots of 2 plus 4 as my answer here, okay? And it does say we want units, so let's talk about the units of this. R of t is measured in gallons per hour, so gallons per hour. Okay. So let's get our second point then. We need to explain the meaning of the answer in the context of the problem. All right, well, we're talking about at a t value of 9 over 4. So at t equals 9 over 4. But what the heck does that mean? Well, t is measured in hours since the pump turned on. So hours since the pump was turned on. All right, what's happening? Well, I know that R of t is talking about the rate that oil is being pumped into the tank. It's not just how much oil is in the tank. In fact, it isn't the amount of oil that's in the tank. It is the rate that oil is being pumped into the tank in gallons per hour. Okay, so we need to finish this off then by saying the rate that oil was pumped into the tank. All right, and then now we want to actually talk about what the heck this thing is. So, well, it is 2 rad 2 plus 4 gallons per hour. Okay. And let's talk points. Now, you earned your first point right here when you got the correct numerical answer with the 2 square roots of 2 plus 4. The second point, in order to earn it, you have to have this sentence, and your sentence must contain the following things. It's got to talk about at what time. It needs to say the rate that the oil was pumped into the tank. All right, so we got to talk about the time. We got to talk about what it was. And then we got to have the gallons per hour. The units need to be correct here as well. Now, whatever your answer was for R of 9 over 4 has to align with right here. If you had gotten R of 9 over 4 incorrect and you plugged it in right here, but those things that I underlined were all correct, you can still earn this second point, the sentence point, all right? Even if you have the wrong number right here. If you have the underlined things correct, you earn the point. So that was a 2-point problem right there. Just like up here, we also had a 2-point problem. Okay, cool. So we've got 2 points, 2 points. Let's talk about C now, all right? So what is the maximum value that R attains, and when is the first time that R attains this maximum? Okay, so just thinking about the rough sketch that I have in my head of this function R of t, it looks something like this, and I only care about t greater than 0. So T greater than 0. Only care about t greater than 0. And notice our midline is up here at positive 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's 4. That's my midline. Okay, at 4. And we know our amplitude from before was at 4. So that means that my minimum is actually going to be 0, and my maximum is going to be up here at 8. Right? 4 plus 4 would give me 8, okay? A cosine function, a normal cosine function, starts at a max, comes down to a min, and goes back up to a max. But this is a negative cosine function, so it's going to do the opposite. It'll start down at a minimum, it'll go up to a maximum, and it'll come back down to a minimum, and that maximum is going to lie right in the middle, so right about there. Okay, let's get our concavity correct for our sketch. I want it to be concave up like a cup, then down like a frown. Then it's going to come back to being up like a cup. Okay, oh, not the best sketch, but you get the idea. Okay, cool. So I want to figure out what goes on this x-axis. I have my y-axis nice and labeled, but the x-axis, well, that's got to do with the period, and the period is 6 hours. So a complete cycle from minimum to minimum would be 6 hours, right? And if we're asking for when the maximum happens, well, that's going to happen halfway. So at 3 is going to be when we have our maximum. All right, let's capture all of that. Then we have the maximum value is going to be 8 gallons per hour. And it happens when we have t equal to 3 hours since the pump has been turned on. Okay, and we can check that. Let's just do a real quick check to make sure we do actually get 8 when we plug 3 in. So check. All right, if I plug into r of t, I'm going to find r of 3. Well, r of 3 is equal to negative 4 cosine of pi times 3 over 3 plus 4. So I get negative 4 cosine of pi plus 4. And cosine of pi, just a real quick check, cosine of pi, we're talking about pi is over here. So the coordinates would be negative 1 comma 0 over there. So the cosine of pi, that's going to be the x value is negative 1. So we're talking about negative 4 times negative 1 plus 4. Oh yeah, that is 8 as we were looking for. We were looking for to get that max value of 8. So yep, at 3 we definitely are going to hit 8 right there. Okay, so how do points get awarded here? Well, it's just very simple, straightforward. 2 points, 1 for each of the 2 values. 1 for getting the 8 and 1 for telling it happens when t is equal to 3 hours. All right. So that is all for this video. Tune back in and we will get parts D, E, and F in the second video.